Imagine if tomorrow morning the government declared Amazon, Google, and every major bank a terrorist organization, arresting every employee in a single coordinated strike. That's almost exactly what happened on Friday, October 13th, 1307. And it begs a terrifying question. What was the secret so dangerous that a king would risk eternal damnation to destroy it? And what great kingdom vanished in the smoke of their funeral pyres? The Knights Templar were born from the dust and blood of the First Crusade. Their sworn sacred duty was simple: to protect pilgrims on the treacherous roads to Jerusalem. They were the poor fellow soldiers of Christ, a humble monastic order. But power, like a desert spring, draws all to it. They were disciplined, they were fearless, and they were trusted. Kings and nobles marching to war needed a safe place to store their wealth, a place safer than a castle, more reliable than a king's promise. And so the Templars, the guardians of the road, became the guardians of treasure. You must understand, this was not simply a bank. This was the invention of finance itself. They created a system of credit notes, a way for you to deposit your gold in London and withdraw its value in Acre, without a single coin ever making that perilous journey. They created a network that transcended borders. It was a web of power, woven not with steel, but with trust and gold. And in the threads of that web, a new kind of kingdom began to form. This was their first secret. Their kingdom was not one of land and soil to be won with a sword. It was a kingdom of influence, an empire of logistics and finance that made the feudal world look archaic. While kings bickered over muddy fields and border towns, the Templars were moving wealth, information, and men across the entire known world. They answered to no king. They answered only to the Pope in Rome. They were the first truly global corporation, a state within every state. The pact was broken, and with it, the old world of kings and crowns was suddenly standing on a precipice. Now enter the man who stood at that precipice, King Philip IV of France, known as Philip the Fair for his handsome features, not his character. He was a king of absolute ambition, who saw France not as a kingdom, but as his personal property, and he was drowning in debt. His wars had bled the royal coffers dry. And who was his chief creditor? The very order he harbored in his lands, the Knights Templar. Imagine his fury. Imagine his fear. Every time he needed funds, he had to go, cap in hand, to the warrior monks whose Paris temple towered over his own palace. They were wealthier than him, they were better organized than him, and they held an authority that his crown could not grant and his armies could not conquer. Why did Philip betray them? The chronicles say it was for their gold. But this is too simple. You do not burn down the world's most powerful bank just to rob the vault. No. Philip didn't just want their money. He wanted to extinguish their idea. The turn came when Philip realized the true nature of the Templar threat. He saw that they were building a future that had no place for kings like him. A new world order based on merit, international cooperation, and a centralized authority loyal only to God. This was not just a challenge to his treasury. It was a challenge to the divine right of kings itself. How could he fight such an enemy? He could not defeat them on the battlefield. Their fortresses were impregnable. So he chose a different weapon, a poison. He chose heresy. You see, in that age, it was the ultimate weapon. An accusation of heresy once uttered could not be unheard. It stained the soul. And Philip, with his ruthless chancellor Guillaume de Nogaret, crafted a masterpiece of disinformation. They whispered that the Templars in their secret initiation rites spat upon the cross. They claimed the knights worshipped a demonic head named Baphomet. that they denied Christ and practiced vile, unspeakable rites. Were any of these charges true? Look closer. The warrior monk sworn to die for the cross is accused of spitting on it. The banker, whose entire system is built on unbreakable trust, is accused of treachery. The charges were not designed to be believable. They were designed to be spiritually terrifying. They were the mirror image of everything the Templars truly were. A perfect inversion, a sacrilege crafted to destroy the sacred. And so, on that cursed Friday, the trap was sprung. The knights were dragged to dungeons, to the cold stone rooms beneath their own preceptories. You have to picture this. These are the most elite warriors of their age, men who had faced down armies in the Holy Land. Now they were alone, in the dark, facing the king's torturers. The pain was unimaginable. The rack, the strappado, the burning of feet. Confessions were extracted, one agonizing word at a time. Of course they confessed. Any man would. They confessed to spitting on crosses that were not there, to worshipping idols they had never seen. The Grandmaster himself, Jacques de Molay, confessed under the torment. The weapon had worked. The poison had spread. The reputation of the order was shattered. The silence that followed those confessions was heavier than any mountain. But the story does not end there. For years the trial dragged on. Many knights, in a final heroic act of defiance, recanted their forced confessions. They chose the fire over the lie. In 1314, Jacques de Molay, the last Grandmaster, was brought to a small island in the Seine, in the shadow of Notre Dame Cathedral. He was to be burned as a relapsed heretic, and here, at the very end, we find the final piece of the riddle. Standing amidst the flames, his body burning, de Molay did something that sealed the fate of a dynasty. He lifted his voice and he cursed his betrayers, King Philip and the Pope Clement V, who had abandoned them. He summoned them to appear before the judgment of God within the year. A dying man's curse or a prophecy? Within 1 month, Pope Clement was dead. Before the year was out, King Philip the Fair died from a stroke during a hunt. The curse was fulfilled, and for the next 14 years, the French throne was thrown into chaos as Philip's sons died one after another, leaving no male heir. The Capetian dynasty, which had ruled France for over 300 years, was extinguished. The king had won his battle. He had destroyed the Templar order and seized their wealth, but he lost the war. His victory was ash in his mouth. So we return to our central question. What was the secret kingdom that was erased? It was the future. The Templars, with their global network, their meritocratic structure, and their system of finance, were a glimpse of the modern world in a medieval age. They were building a power structure that could have united Europe under a different banner, not of feudal loyalty, but of commerce, faith, and centralized organization. Philip didn't just execute men, he executed an idea. He chose to preserve his own fleeting power by dragging the world back into the darkness. The betrayal was not just the arrest of an order. It was the assassination of a new age before it could be born. And yet, one mystery remains. On the night of the arrests, the Templar fleet, docked at La Rochelle on the French coast, vanished without a trace. A fleet of treasure ships, laden with the accumulated wealth, and more importantly, the accumulated knowledge of the order. They were never seen again. History tells us the Templars were destroyed. But myths are more stubborn than history. The idea of their secret kingdom did not die in the flames with Jacques de Molay. It simply sailed over the horizon. It became a legend, a story of a lost inheritance, a hidden truth, a secret brotherhood that continues its work in the shadows, waiting. That is the echo of their betrayal. It teaches us a timeless truth, that you can kill a man, You can burn an organization, but you cannot kill a powerful idea. And that the greatest wars in history are never fought over land or gold. They are fought over the future and who gets to build it.